Holy balls, 3D printing is hard. It's confusing, difficult, messy, and might kill me, but I kinda love it. My name's Guy, you're watching Midwinter Minis, and I've been collecting and painting these little war dollies for about 30 years, but man, they're expensive. And the prices keep going up year after year. But fortunately, 3D printing is here to save the day. Maybe. Download free stuff, buy cheap files, and print your own miniatures at home. Couldn't be easier, right? Wrong. In this video, I'm going to share my absolute honest experience of resin 3D printing with you. A couple of years ago, I tried to get into 3D printing. It seemed like I was the only miniature painting channel on YouTube that didn't use one. But honestly, I absolutely failed at it. I sucked. Big time. After spending a lot of time researching and investing about £400 in my own setup, the only things I managed to print were some shoulder armor bits for my Imperial Knight. Pretty much everything else I tried failed. Even after hours of research and a lot of trial and error, fail after fail. And I gave up. But that was then, this is now. 2024 is going to be the year that I finally bite the bullet and get good at 3D printing with a little bit of expert help. And not only that, I'm going to share my journey with you. I'll show you the good side and the bad side too. And that way you'll hopefully be able to make up your own mind whether or not 3D printing is right for you, or if you should just stick to buying your little plastic toy soldiers. Before I jump ahead, let me quickly explain some of the basics of 3D printing, just in case you're absolutely new to this, just like I was a couple of years ago. Just like a regular printer lets you print out 2D images line by line using the ingredients of ink and paper, 3D printers let you create three-dimensional objects layer by layer using the ingredients of either plastic and heat or resin and ultraviolet light. There are other types, but they're way more rare, so I'll ignore them for this video. The two main types of 3D printing we have available as consumers are FDM, that's fused deposition modeling, and resin printing, or SLA, that stands for stereolithography if you're feeling fancy. FDM uses melted plastic filament. Think of it like a very precise hot glue gun to build objects layer by layer. In general, FDM printers are pretty affordable, relatively user-friendly, and great at creating larger items that don't necessarily require tiny, delicate details. You can still get great detail if you spend time experimenting with the best settings, and lots of people in the hobby prefer to use FDM printers for stuff like terrain, but nothing compares to the precision of resin. Resin printing solidifies liquid resin layer by layer using UV light, resulting in highly detailed and smooth objects. It's ideal for intricate small items and is obviously really popular in the wargaming hobby for those exact reasons, for printing tiny, very detailed miniatures. So that's you up to speed on what 3D printing actually is, so hopefully it should be pretty obvious why I might want to get involved. Now, I know a lot of people want to stick it to the man and print pretty much exact copies of Games Workshop models themselves, but that's not me. I'm way more interested in the talented independent sculptors who make really interesting, unique stuff that I can't get elsewhere. I really love the idea of supporting little cottage industries who have all kinds of weird and wild designs, stuff that's either too risky or risque for big companies to bother producing. It's also a great way to make your own bits and conversion parts, especially for stuff that's long out of production and impossibly expensive on the resale market. So that is why I want to get good at this and make 3D printing a part of my hobby experience. And even though 370,000 people have subscribed to this channel over the years, Midwinter Minis is essentially about following my hobby journey, and I reckon 3D printing will definitely benefit that. However, as I've obviously demonstrated with my appalling track record, I am not a 3D printing expert. So I did what probably anyone would do in this situation. I cried in the shower. I asked for expert advice. Meet Ross, or Fohammer as you might already know him. He's an absolute boss when it comes to 3D printing, and he's probably reviewed and tested more 3D printers for miniatures than anyone else on the planet. Who better to help me out? But which printer should I go for? I had a good old chat with him about the best printers on the market at the moment, and for what I wanted, reliability, ease of use, exceptional print quality, as safe as possible, and cheaper than one big resin Warhammer model. And without hesitation, he recommended the newly released Uniformation GKTwo. Gonna be honest, I never heard of them, but I suppose that's why he's the expert and I'm not. He actually put me in touch with Uniformation, who kindly sent the GK2 for me to try out for the video. I told them that I had bad experiences of 3D printing in the past, and that I couldn't guarantee a positive review, or even a useful video, and they said, yeah, we don't mind, just try it out anyway and see what you think, we're sure you'll love it. I mean, you can't fault the positivity. Ross also said he'd come all the way down from the Midlands to Colchester to hold my hand through the basics, and hopefully, if you're a total beginner like me, you can learn too. And not only that, you can also set your expectations of what's actually involved. So to get things ready, Hattie and I cleared out the corner of the painting room to use for 3D printing. I got this cheap racking unit off Amazon, as well as a few accessories that Ross said would make things way easier, like this big pickle jar and this non-stick tray. We built the racking, set up the printer, the curing box, and the wash box, with some spare room on the rack for spray paints, merch storage, stuff like that. Ross arrived with us and immediately set me to task, making me do all of the setup myself under his guidance. Definitely the best way to teach, I think. First off, I need to set up the printer. I removed the protective cover inside and raised the height of the arm that will hold the build plate. Now that's out of the way, I can take the resin vat out and attach the build plate, which just pushes on and gets locked in place with a clamp. Easy peasy so far. One of the pain points most people experience with resin printing is a thing called leveling. That's getting the angle of the build plate perfectly flat to the screen. The way the GK2 does it seems remarkably simple compared to my old printer. It comes with these little test strips that you fold twice so it's 3 layers thick, place them at each corner of the screen and lower the build plate right to the bottom. Now you just need to adjust the little screws on top of the build plate until there's tension on all the bits of paper and none of them can be pulled out easily. And done. That took about 3 minutes. Take the protective film off the bottom of the resin vat, slot it in, and wait, that's it? Wow, okay, Ross really wasn't joking when he said this one was easy. This printer also comes with a wireless adapter so you can send files directly to it, but it's literally in the next room, so I think I'll just do it the old school way with a USB drive, which they included too. Now, in the same way you can't just chuck all your ingredients in the oven and expect it to know what meal you want, you can't just download a 3D file and stick it into the printer and expect it to know how you want it to print. So next up, we're going to need to get a piece of software called a slicer. This will read your 3D files and create data that your 3D printer can read and translate and tell it what to print, the size you want it, how you want it all to be arranged on the build plate, and the right printer settings for whatever resin you're using. Ross told me to grab Chitubox, which is free, and while it has its quirks, it's relatively straightforward to use. Because he's well versed with using this particular printer already, he let me know the right settings to punch in. Now, chances are you're not going to be using exactly this resin or exactly this printer, and that's what we're entering here. But if you want to follow along exactly with what I'm doing, these are apparently the ideal settings for the GK2 with the resin we're using, which is called Warhammer resin, which Ross actually helped create. So take a screenshot now if you want. Now, this video obviously isn't a guide to help you set up your particular printer. There are hundreds of printers out there at the moment, but the community has grown so much since I tried and failed 4 years ago. YouTube, Reddit, forums are absolutely packed with professionals and experienced amateurs sharing their advice for whatever printer you're thinking of getting. So for my first time, we're just going to see if it actually prints using the simple XP2 validation print. Ross told me to shake the ever-loving shit out of the resin to make sure that it was well mixed with no sediment left at the bottom, and then it's just a case of gloving up and carefully pouring the resin into the resin vat. The GK2 has a little pooling area toward the top to let you know when you've got an optimal amount of resin in the vat, and so you know it's not too full. Oh my god, here it goes, moment of truth. Now, by the way, I know one of the biggest concerns a lot of people have with resin printing is how potentially hazardous the fumes are, or how smelly it is, so I made sure to keep my air filter and monitor running for the whole process. Now, the stinkiness honestly depends on which resin you're using, and what you're going to use to wash it with. Ross's Warhammer resin is not very stinky at all, and he's brought some odourless spirits to wash the prints in, so all in all, I have to say that the smell was very very subtle, barely noticeable. My old Anycubic resin absolutely stank of chemicals and stank my whole house out, so if you're sensitive to industrial smells, the odorless resins will really help you out here. Whenever you use a chemical, it's going to kick off VOCs, volatile organic compounds, basically either evaporating or off-gassing nasty chemicals that aren't brilliant for your health. But look at this. My monitor has been going the whole time and it's barely budged from its safe green base level. I paint in this room, so there's nearly always recently painted, glued or drying models, so the level almost never goes to zero. Good stuff so far. Also, the GK2 has an inbuilt carbon filter at the back to purify the air coming out of the machine while it's running, which is a nice touch. Ross recommended we actually put the wash station next to the printer, so we quickly swapped the curing station for the wash station. The wash machine basically looks like a deep fat fryer. You fill it up with a cleaning solution, pop your prints in the little basket, lower them down, and then activate the ultrasonic cleaner, and it jiggles all of the uncured resin residue off whatever you've printed. While the Wargamer resin is both water washable and spirit washable, Ross recommended odorless methylated spirit for its performance. And also, this is where the mysterious pickle jar comes into play. By giving your prints a quick rinse in the pickle jar first, using a smaller amount of cleaning fluid, you prolong the usable life of the cleaning fluid in the ultrasonic cleaner, which is more of a hassle to clean out than the small pickle jar. But, oh, would you look at that? While the odorless spirit doesn't smell bad, it absolutely maxed out the VOC meter on our monitor. So that's to say this is very much in the "this is not good for you" zone. Let's keep an eye on this and see what happens over the course of the printing session. Anyway, pressing on, using a little tool that came with a printer that kind of looks like a small wallpaper scraper, I popped off the calibration print. That was easy, it just came right off. I remember the absolute arseache of trying to knock my prints off the old Anycubic Photon. No problem here though. I then dropped it into the pickle jar, gave it a good swooshing up and down to release the excess resin, and into the wash station to give it a thorough cleaning. Wow, pristine. And also, oh my god, it worked. Okay, let's print something more fun. For my next little test, I printed off one of my mate Steve's cool power packs that he designed. They're nice and small and shouldn't take too long. Now, instead of printing flat on the build plate like the test plate, these files have these little structures of thin, wiry bits called supports, which help the printer perfectly render particularly detailed and overhanging bits. Steve has supported these files already, which was nice of him. Thanks, bud. Anyway, same process. Import the file to the slicer, arrange it how you want, export it, stick that exported file in the printer, and let her rip. About 20 minutes later, boom, 3 power packs. Now let's just get them off the, okay, let's just fish this out of the resin pool and into the pickle jar, slosh, 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 and into the cleaner. I mean, 10 minutes later and whew, they look crisp. Now, these aren't finished yet. They're cured just enough to actually be printed, but they're still really tacky and fragile. They need to be cured under UV light for a while to make them nice and solid, like the minis you're used to building and painting. However, while they're still soft like this is the perfect time to peel away the supports. Oh, that's satisfying. Now it seems like a bit of a waste to run the curing machine just for these, so let's print off some more stuff, some bigger stuff, and then cure everything at the same time. Oh god, point proven, the methylated spirit is really kicking off a ton of VOCs, so I opened the window to air the place out, which is a choice because it's only 3 degrees outside. Now, another big pain point 3D printers experience is trying to keep the ambient temperature of the room in ideal printing conditions. Printer resin is just a liquid and expands and contracts like any other liquid with temperature changes, so printing when it's slightly too hot or slightly too cold can result in failed prints, where stuff doesn't stick to the build plate or has missing areas. But this is where the GK2 actually comes into its own, as it preheats the resin vat to one of 3 different temperatures, 25, 30 or 35 degrees Celsius, to minimize your chance of failure. Anyway, I grabbed some more models to test out the printer's capabilities. I've been following an independent sculptor called Dork Factory for ages. They make really unique sci-fi models that, for me, perfectly suit the grimdark Warhammer vibe without being total rip-offs of Games Workshop's own designs. I bought this Unseen Executioner model for $7.50, which is about 6 Brexit bucks at today's rates, and put it into Chitty Box. And hey, Want a large-scale 75mm model instead of a regular heroic scale model? No worries, just copy it, change the scale, 230%-ish larger than the original. Let's see how that looks. Also, Ross recommended I print this spectacular looking showcase mini that you can download from the printer company directly. It's got tons of different textures and shapes for the printer to get its screen around, so it would really put it through its paces. Now, because these models are much taller than the rest, they're going to need longer to print. Half a day in this case. So we left the printer running overnight, and oh, would you look at that, it's Wednesday, games night, and we invited Ross to join the gang for another mission of Hero Quest.
Everyone wave, say hi! Hi!
Okay, let's see what we've got here. Oh my god, there's something in there. I left the window open a little all night to let the fumes out, and by the morning I had a bloody freezing studio room, but no VOCs, and a successful print. That heating bed obviously worked. Nice. And I popped the prints off one by one and just followed the same steps. Pickle jar rinse, a thorough wash with the cleaning machine, and then I removed the supports. I mean, I have to say, this is bloody incredible. I can't quite believe what a difference this is compared to trying to use the budget Anycubic photon printer I got back in 2019. That being said, I forgot that uncured models are still really fragile, and I think I did a bit too much cleanup before curing them and roughed up some of the surfaces. I mean, oh well, I'll know for next time. We popped the curing machine on top of the printer while it's not in use, and gave everything a good old blast of curing, purifying UV light. Now, if you're going to compare the wash machine to a deep fat fryer, the curing machine is basically a microwave, but with UV light rather than cooking death rays. And yeah, obviously, as soon as we closed the window and started messing around with the spirits, boom, VOCs through the roof. Now, while the stuff was curing, I drained the cleaner of these spirits back into the bottle to hopefully stop it evaporating into the atmosphere too much. Also, never done this before, made a bit of a mess, but hey, that's what carpet cleaners are for. I honestly don't know how anyone with kids and pets and carpets survives without one of these. This bit of floor is going to be so goddamn clean. Ross inspected my efforts and, well, what more is there to do? I think that's mission accomplished for him. Thanks to his awesome gear recommendation and tutelage, I'm pretty confident I can do this. But going forward, will I? Is 3D printing really for me? After all this, having amazing hands-on help and using the best commercial gear available, I'm still not sure. It's obviously, without a doubt, a fantastic tool for our hobby. It democratizes the process of actually creating the minis we all love collecting, but truthfully, it comes at a cost. Now, just because this video is essentially sponsored by Uniformation because they sent me the stuff, I'm not going to lie to you. Their machines are bloody amazing. Easy to set up. The results are phenomenal. I mean, can you see any layer lines? My $2,000 resin Warlord Titan has more layer lines than this stuff. So I can definitely, hand on heart, fully recommend the GK2 cleaner and curing station. But is 3D printing really for me in my setup, in my home studio? Honestly, I'm not so sure. Is 3D printing now at a place where a casual hobbyist can do it at home with absolutely no danger involved? Absolutely not. Let me explain. As I said, since we moved out of the old windowless studio, I'm now working at home again, and it's a home I share with my children, my awesome twins, who are now 2.5, and incredibly curious about Daddy's toys and paints.
It's a Titan! Daddy loves an Atlas.
That's right! I also obviously have a dog who will try to eat literally anything that falls out of your hands. While I'm confident about my use of using safety equipment and protocol when handling 3D printer resin, the idea of having very, very toxic liquids out and about in my home kinda terrifies me. I'm obviously going to do my best to keep things out of reach, and I have locks very high up on the outside of the studio doors so the kids can't get in when I'm not looking, but still, the fear is real. The VOCs are definitely also an issue. They can be mitigated with air purifiers when it's cold outside, or by opening the window when the weather's a bit better. I mean, short blasts of high VOCs isn't really an issue. You'd get the same results from spraying a little bit of perfume or maybe doing some airbrushing. But if I had my ultrasonic cleaner full of methylated spirit 24/7, I'd basically be slowly poisoning myself every single time I was working, which isn't ideal. Fortunately, there are lots of water washable resins out there, which is a relief. Even the Warhammer resin I've been using is water washable apparently, but Ross said it has its own issues, and the cleaning of water washable resin has to be pretty precise on timings, but maybe that should be my next experiment. I feel like if I was working in manufacturing and my employer expected me to use this kit and the chemicals involved, I would expect some serious training beforehand and supervisors monitoring correct health and safety protocol. It kind of worries me that thousands and thousands of people are doing this in their spare rooms, to be honest. It also takes up a surprising amount of space. This rack is a pretty good solution to keep everything vaguely in one area. If you've got a dedicated desk for that kind of thing, well, that would probably be good. It's a lot of space to dedicate to what is essentially an ancillary tool to complement your hobby of miniature painting, your hobby of miniature wargaming. Whereas an airbrush and compressor take up, well, not very much room at all, you're basically going to need a dedicated piece of furniture to do your 3D printing safely without getting resin blobs everywhere. So, I know you've watched this video so patiently, and I bet you want some kind of really dramatic YouTuber reaction to it, but I'm just not sure. I can see the good sides and I can see the bad sides, but for me, I don't really know which side the scales are tipping on. There's tons of incredible 3D sculptors out there who do amazing, unique things, and I'm really excited to buy some of them and print them. It would be such a shame to shut off that possibility entirely. What I think I'll just have to do is be boring and patient and experiment more, especially with the water washable resin, and also try my absolute best not to let 3D printing become my hobby. Because honestly, I don't have the time for two big hobbies. Now I know if you've got this far in the video, I bet you'll have tons and tons of questions, but oh my god, this video is so long already. Ross and I did a dedicated Q&A video where I threw loads of beginner questions at him, which you can find over on his Warhammer channel. Make sure to head over there and subscribe, and I'll pop a link to that video in the description of this one as soon as it's ready. Two conclusions to draw here. I mean, obviously, first off, holy balls, that printer is amazing. The difference between the Uniformation GKTwo and the Anycubic Photon that I tried to learn on originally is night and day. I bought the Photon at the end of 2019 on sale for $289. With the wild rate of inflation at the moment, that's about $340 in today's money. The GK2 costs $850 right now. And I know that's 2.5 times more than essentially what I paid at the time for the Photon, but it's absolutely 100% worth the jump in price. In terms of ease of use, features like the heated vat, air filter, the massive printable area, and, well, just the quality of what it puts out. I mean, that's the ultimate test, I suppose. It just blows the Photon away. The second conclusion is I'm still obviously not a 3D printing convert, but I'm not ruling it out, and I'm going to see what the future brings. What I would be really interested to hear, though, is what you think. I want to hear about your first experiences of 3D printing. And if you haven't started yet, I'd like to hear your thoughts on what appeals to you and what puts you off. And by the way, if you fancy trying out the GK2 for yourself, I've left a link to it in the video description down below that'll let Uniformation know that we sent you. I mean, they were kind enough to send us all the gear with no expectations, so I think it would only be polite to let them know if we inspired you to try out one of their printers. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video if you've made it this far, maybe subscribe to the channel, and be sure to head over to the Warhammer channel if you want to check out the awesome videos Ross makes about all sorts of 3D printing stuff, from tutorials, troubleshooting, to more fun, silly projects too. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.